all we know is how little we know. That's been for many years my definition of an educated person, someone who knows enough to know how ignorant they are. It actually is the only, it's not my own original definition, it comes from the Greek, but it's the only definition that works. And no one working, toiling in the field of science could possibly say anything less or more of themselves, especially at a time like this. But there you have it right away. The theistic and the deistic explanation has to be based on a certainty that there is a supervising and, if you want to be a theist, a caring and intervening creator who manages these matters. And there hasn't been a single sentence so far from Dr. Turek in support of that proposition. Let me give you an example. If you the event horizon of Stephen Hawking that I just mentioned, I'll take a cosmological one to begin with. The event horizon is the lip of the black hole. Suppose you could travel towards a black hole and see it, and see the lip of it, and notice it before you went in and over and down. That's what's known as the event horizon to physicists. Hawking had a gravely ill colleague in Cambridge who said if he knew he was definitely going to die, that's the way he'd like to go, be falling into the event horizon lip of the black hole, because in theory you'd be able to see the past and the future and time, except you wouldn't have quite enough time to do so. But there would be a grand way to check out if you were a physicist. Turn away from this, turn away from that. These incredible, majestic, awe-inspiring thoughts say that think about the burning bush instead. Think about the trivial miracles witnessed by sheep-herding peasants in Bronze Age Palestine. And think about the debt that they feel that we should incur for their sins. It was stated by Dr. Turek that the sins of these people, the transgressions of these people, and the debt they owe their Creator bind all of us as sinners. What a shame we're not perfect. What a shame there's nothing we can do about it. What a shame we're created already in prison and have to earn our emancipation. I tell you again, this is servility to the ultimate power. Now, there are people in this audience much better equipped than I to say that there is so far nothing in our natural world, to move away from the cosmological, there is nothing in our natural world, the globe we live on, that cannot be explained by random mutation combined with evolution by natural selection. Nothing works without that assumption. Everything works with it. There are lots of things that remain to be decided, but it's not a theory, or not just one. It does work, it is operational, it doesn't require a prime mover. Occam's razor says we should dispose of unnecessary, needless assumptions. That's what I propose we do in this case. I'll put it another way. How long would you say Homo sapiens has been on the planet? Francis, not Crick, excuse me, the author of the supervisor of the Human Genome Project, Collins, my new best friend and occasional debating enemy, thinks, well, not more than 500,000 years. Richard Dawkins thinks it could be as much as 750,000. I can sink the number, actually, if you like. We know that the species left Africa about 75,000 years ago, having probably shrunk down to about 2,000 or 3,000 people as a result of a terrible climatic disturbance, probably from Indonesia, probably from a predecessor of Krakatoa, which meant that we were this close to joining the 99.8% of all species ever living on the surface of this planet who became extinct. Some design, by the way. Profuse creation of millions and millions and millions of life forms, all to be wiped out, with not even anyone left to testify to their previous existence. We nearly joined that lot. Managed to get out of it just in time. Let's call it, I don't want Francis's million or 500,000 or Richard Dawkins' 75,000, whichever way around. Just give me that amount of time. Suppose we've only been around for 75,000 years. Monotheism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, shows up, what, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago the most. Right? So if you give me my most microscopically small assumption of human existence, for at least 70,000 years, heaven watches as the human species is born, dies, usually of its teeth, usually at about 20, usually its infants having about a 9, 10, 2% chance of living beyond. I don't have to draw you a picture. Watches this with indifference. Thousands and thousands of generations, miserable, illiterate, starving, hungry, to say nothing of the wars they'll fight with each other, to say nothing of the cruelties they will inflict, as well as the ones they will suffer just from existence. And only 3 or 4, perhaps 5,000 years ago, heaven decides it's enough of that. It's time for an intervention. And the best way to do it would be in the most primitive part of the Middle East, not in China where people can read and have looked at telescopes. No, in the most primitive part of the Middle East, basically by offering human sacrifice to them. This is a doctrine that cannot be believed by anyone who's studied anything scientific, anything historical, anything archaeological, anything paleological, anything biological. Can't be believed by anyone. Can't be only believed by someone who wants to be a plaything and a slave of a pitiless totalitarian power. How glad we should be that the evidence for this ghastly entity is nil. Good. Thanks.
Let me ask you this question. Scientists who begin to look at the universe ask themselves this question: why does the universe have the rules that it does? Why does the universe operate according to the particular dials and parameters it has? What if those parameters were a little different? And the scientists who look at that said, if you change these parameters even an infinitesimal amount, if the gravitational force were slightly different, or the strong nuclear force, or the electroweak force, we would not have this universe, we would not have life, we would not be here having this debate. Now, what is your explanation for how we live in such a fine-tuned universe? It would seem to suggest a fine-tuner or designer. Darwinism is hopeless here because it's not accounting for the universe, only for transitions among life. So what is your rational theory for why we live in a fine-tuned universe?
Right. Well, there's a good reason why no one comes to me for arguments about physics, so I'll have to take, but I'm not ducking the question. Just for your notebooks, ladies and gentlemen, there is a book by Professor Victor Stenger on this subject. Dinesh deals with it also in his book, that makes the bold claim that science actually negates the case for the existence of God.
Well, Stenger says the laws of physics come out of nothing. Do you agree with that?
Further than I would have gone, I'm saying I recommend that you read it. A chasm of tautology yawns at the feet of all those who go in for this argument. Richard Dawkins actually said to me once he thought it was the most interesting argument he'd so far heard or encountered in all the debates we've all had with the faithful, and it is, because there's something extraordinary about it. Of course, also appeals to us, because anything that says to us, you know, you might not have been here, but you are, so that must be something majestic, is obviously appealing to us. It's sometimes known as anthropocentric. Look at the consequences. Look at an example just in the suburb of this argument where we happen to live. A tiny solar system on the very, very edge of the known universe, with a sun that is going to flare up in a while into a red dwarf, go out, having boiled us alive, on the only planet in its solar system that can support, or I think ever has supported, anything like life. Of the other planets, most of them are either or all of them, I should say, are either much too hot or much too cold. This is just in our hood, on our block, to support life. And that's true also of huge tracts of our own dear planet, which we happen to know, whatever argument we take about it.
Christopher, I'm sorry, you're filibustering me a little bit here. This is cross-examination.
It's poised on a climatic knife edge. So I would say, bear that in mind, and I would add, quite some design, and quite some designer.
Well, you said that...
No, I thought it was my turn to ask a question. Yeah. Well, actually, I will forego my question to you if you'll re-ask your question to me about atheist tyrannies and massacres. And I won't take too much time on it.
I'd be
Otherwise I
willing,
have to ask it to myself.
I'd be willing to ask you those questions if you let it go in a cross-examination. Otherwise, I ask a question and you take up all the time.
Well, no, that's why I was asking. That's why I was asking you if that condition would seem fair. I mean, I must answer the question which you have asked me in one of your contributions. Shall we leave it for a...
Let me do it this way. How about if I put the ball in your court, you pose the questions to me on this topic, and we can go back and forth?
All right, then.
Okay.
Okay. On this question, then, of atheists and secular dictatorships that I'm only just mentioning, has it ever struck you that the original totalitarian movement of the 20th century, the one that actually invented the term totalitarianism, popularized it, claimed it for itself, the movement of Mussolini, Franco, Salazar, the Ustasha in Croatia, Father Tiso in Slovakia, you'll see where I'm going with this now, was basically only another term for the Catholic right wing. There's nothing secular about fascism. If there had been, the Vatican would not have signed treaties and concordats with all of the movements and governments that fascism created. I don't think I need to waste very much more time on that. There's a big literature on it. The Church keeps on apologizing for this, as for its engagements with similar political movements and governments in Latin America after the Second World War, after the main battle against fascism was over. The German version of this is not the same. It's quite clear that Hitler disliked Christianity, though he never repudiated his Catholicism, praised the church in Mein Kampf, asked for his birthday to be celebrated, which it was every year in every Catholic church in Germany by the order of the Vatican. And
Christopher, my turn?
Well, wait, just in view of this, in view of the fact that not one person, according to Paul Johnson, Catholic historian known to you, I think has praised your work, up to 50% of the Waffen-SS were confessing Catholics, none of whom were ever threatened with excommunication for their activities. The only Nazi I know of to be excommunicated by the Roman Catholic Church was Joseph Goebbels. And do you want to know why that was? Do you want to guess? He married a Protestant. Magda Goebbels was a Protestant. The church said, excuse me, we do have our standards.
All right.
This is not secularism, Dinesh, and it's quite false to say. And it's actually, there's an insinuation in it that I reject and resent. It's quite false to say that these are the outcomes of secular politics. Thank you.
When I first came to America,
Or rather, wouldn't you say? It's supposed to be a question.